Okay, I'm reading Wikipedia, and it says that the People's War on Terror started in 2014. Now, by 2014, I had already been determined by somebody to be ineligible to continue working at the San Francisco Department of Public Health. And my understanding is that ultimately the reason why is the same reason I wasn't able to keep my job as a union organizer at Local 880. And somebody decided at some point, I think even before I went to college, I was never supposed to be able to be a member of a union. I was never supposed to be able to be a member of a collective bargaining unit, such as a labor union. And the whole reason that I ended up getting deemed to be whatever it was that they couldn't keep me because I didn't pass the probationary period, it's because they were never going to let me join an actual labor union. Are they? Do they call them vocational education and training centers? Would that do anything to abbreviate into CVE in Chinese? Do you guys want to keep playing around with this shit? Do you want to keep playing around with this shit? That would be 13 years after September 11th. 13 years after September 11th. How long do people stay at these camps? Let me ask you, is it the kind of thing where you come in and maybe do like an immediate, maybe 3 day observation, and then they give you maybe a 2 week, a 10 day to 2 week intensive integration program? And then how long after that are you re educated? Are you in the camp for 6 months? Are you in the camp for up to 6 months being re educated? Do they do meal planning? Do they try to get you to engage in chores and or things up to and including cooking meals that you would not eat yourself if you were allowed to purchase your own food and cook it for yourself? Do they condition you to plan and make meals for multiple people and not just yourself or who you would understand would be your family? Do they put requirements on you doing daily checkups and providing report backs on your mental status or state of mind? Do they require you to demonstrate assimilation of information regarding elements of the program regime that have been determined to be a priority in understanding what your social and political positioning is at the moment? Do they do some form of economic planning by attempting to identify your previous networks and then identifying which networks may be viable for you to return to or resume work with in the future, and which ones are going to be cut off from you, and what other ones you are to be assigned? Do they provide you with some sort of transitional stage where they assign you a work task and maybe test your proficiency after you've assimilated the information and reacclimated to the new programming regime? Do they offer you an incentive for good performance, perhaps even a form of social mobility or political mobility after a period of time if you demonstrate compliance and acknowledge the chain of command or the structure, including the structure for authority? Do they provide you with tasks in order to demonstrate your proficiency, including your mechanical proficiency, and then put you into specific groupings in order to determine whether or not you have assimilated into some form of human production cycle that is responsible for creating an end product? Do they evaluate the use value of that end product in terms of its social value or productivity by using other people or involving other people in the processes of engaging with that product and or the implementation of whatever other regime may be either supported or developed in the course of that product creation? Did they do a sort of situation of acknowledging your relationship to the larger collective, the specific unit within which you've been assigned, by acknowledging when you successfully perform the task which you've been assigned? And do they offer some form of correction, including private correction, if you are non compliant with the parameters that have been assigned to you? Do they have preclusions upon you having specific kinds of social engagement outside of the workspace and permit certain kinds of social engagement but preclude other kinds of social engagement? Do they determine what is considered acceptable political organizing based upon your ascribement in the social regime versus other people who may have been identified as being appropriate for another kind of political or social engagement, and then assure that there is some form of boundary or some sort of indicator or demarcator that distinguishes what's appropriate for you from what's appropriate for them? Is that what you mean? So, are you going to try to give me royalties as part of my role in the production of these so called, what are they called? Vocational education and training centers? Was I a mass creator of what you want to identify as some sort of concentration camp that is disproportionately targeting people of Muslim descent or who identifies Muslim or who are identified as Muslim? You mean like the databases the Department of Justice set up immediately after September 11th that were themselves based on databases that were set up during the Clinton administration after that Schumer bill became the Biden bill and got passed? So, what are you saying here? What if I accept? See, I said it was insurance fraud. I said it was pension fraud. Just so you know. And the thing about financial fraud is that if you actually focus on financial fraud, then you focus on the financing of terrorism. And if there are state actors that are engaging in acts of money laundering or some other illegal or illicit finance scheme, up to and including one that takes bribes, I don't know, maybe even in the form of stocks, or specific kinds of campaign contributions, including campaign contributions of other people's intangible property, which is potentially even inclusive of their actual political campaign. They came up with their own campaign materials. They made it public. They made it their own analysis. They created their own platform. They may even have written their own fucking legislation to be proposed. Then they become state actors and they develop concentration camps.